Welcome back to another week of 5 Minutes in Mark, our weekly video Bible summary of our Wednesday morning Bible class on the Gospel of Mark. Today we are in Mark chapter 12, and we see Jesus in Jerusalem, and he is being tested and trying to be trapped by the Pharisees, by the religious leaders. They come at him one after another. The beginning of chapter 12, Jesus tells this parable of the tenants, which is in response to the religious leaders attacking Jesus at the end of chapter 11. This parable is meant as a not so thinly veiled words against these religious leaders, for they're not doing what they are supposed to do. And now, even the Son of God comes to them, and what do they try and do? They try and put him to death, just like the evil tenants in this parable. Well, that didn't stop the religious leaders from coming at Jesus, though. Then some Pharisees came to Jesus, and they tried to trap him by showing him a coin and asking if it was right to pay taxes to Caesar or not. They were trying to trap Jesus, because if Jesus said that you should pay taxes, well, then the Jewish people who didn't like the Roman rule, they would have been mad at that. And yet if Jesus said, no, you shouldn't pay taxes, well, the Romans, who were all about taxes and receiving them, they would have been mad. So it was a question asked in bad faith, meant to try and trap Jesus. And yet you remember what Jesus says, right? He says, whose image is on the coin? Whose likeness? And they say, it's Caesar's. And Jesus says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. They continue, though, with these attempts. The Sadducees come next. The Sadducees, who don't believe in the resurrection, who don't believe in angels, and they come up with this ridiculous riddle to try and trap Jesus. They say a man died, and then they didn't have any children, and so his wife then, his widow, then marries his brother. And then on it goes until she has been married to all 7 brothers, and yet no children to come after them. And then the Sadducees question, Jesus, who will she be married to in heaven? Jesus says to them, is this not the reason you are wrong? Because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. Again, the Sadducees were attempting in bad faith to try and trap Jesus, but Jesus does not fall for this trap either. It continues on then as Jesus goes, and then at the very end of the chapter, Jesus issues a warning to the scribes and the Pharisees. He says, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in lawn robes and like greetings in the marketplaces and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. Jesus speaks against these outward shows of religion when faith is not present in the heart. Jesus says these people make a show of religion. They want others to see it and praise them, and yet they're missing something. They're missing the most important thing, faith. And so that brings us then to the very end of the chapter. Jesus sits down opposite the treasury outside the temple, and he watches people put money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, but then a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. Jesus commends this woman truly for her faith, right? Faith, that she could give it all, and yet in faith depend on God to provide for her. You know, in the same way, God calls us to be good stewards of what we have been given, and to give even more than what we maybe think we can. Because in giving, whether that's of our time, whether it's of our talents or our treasure, in giving more than we think we can, we are showing faith in God to take care of us, to provide for us, and to give us what we do need. Just like these rich people at the end of Mark chapter 12 who gave large sums out of their abundance. Sometimes it's easy to give when it doesn't hurt us or doesn't really even register with us. But it's a different story, isn't it, when we give to such an extent that we have to be dependent on someone else. And for us as Christians, be dependent on God. And yet we remember that faith is really what God gives to us and calls us to live out in our lives too. If you remember from the Old Testament, the Israelites, as they were in the wilderness, God provided for them, right? He gave them food to eat, manna, which came from the sky and was on the ground each morning. And yet the instruction was only to eat and gather enough for that day. Why? Because they'd have to be dependent on God to bring his gifts to them again the next day. And that worked out wonderfully for God's people. And yet sometimes when they said, hey, we're going to collect some more, we are going to depend on our fridge or our storehouse or our cupboards, well, then all the manna that they took for those other days went bad. God wanted his people to depend on him and to trust in him in faith. The same is true for us today. All we have really is a gift from God. And so what we give back to God is just a portion of what he's given to us. But as we give, he doesn't want us to give mindlessly. He doesn't want us to give to impress others. He wants us to give in faith, thanking God for what he has given to us and trusting in the Lord that he will provide for us and for all we need, just as he has in the past. May God bless us as we continue to grow in our faith and to grow in the joy of returning to God what he has given to us.